Hello, I'm Cathy Gingell. I'm editor of The Conservative Woman. That's conservative with a small c. I don't, as most people know, entirely approve of this government at the moment. In fact, I disapprove so much of what they've done in their response to COVID. It's been so disproportionate, it's been so coercive, it's been so repressive of our liberties, and it's been so dishonest that I've been finally moved to write to the member of government who I probably say I'd know best, who I've known for 10 years, and if not a close friend, I certainly thought of as a friend and somebody I've respected. I cannot believe it's possible that Michael Gove, an intelligent man who I think so many people in the country thought was a special politician and rather different from the mainstream, has descended to this level of something which actually is turning our country from a democracy into a dictatorship and ruining the economy. I thought he was an economic liberal. I thought he was a Democrat. So I've been moved to write to him because I wonder how many people will tell him to his face how appalled they are by what he's doing. So this is the letter I wrote to him, which is up on my website at the moment and which I've posted to him, and I'd like to share it with you. Dear Michael, I feel I have no choice but to write to you directly and publicly to say how appalled I am by your part in the government's response to the COVID-19 virus, which in 6 months has destroyed the country's economic prospects and turned us from a democracy into a dictatorship. For what? For a non-cure that is far worse than the disease. I've known you long enough, about 10 years, I think, and well enough to tell you the truth. Your friends in the press and even at the right-leaning think tanks may still be reluctant to do the same. I suspect they dare not offend you because they need to be under the establishment umbrella. Well, I don't. You once told me that you admired my website, The Conservative Woman. Well, what follows is a reflection of our readers' and contributors' views. This isn't about me or my family, but about our country, the one I thought you valued as I do. You may not be personally responsible for every decision made in recent months, but you are at the heart of the Prime Minister's inner circle and the chief advocate of the government's coercive and economically ruinous policy, as you were again this last weekend. People are asking me, what's happened to the Michael that they knew, that I've known to be a highly intelligent, sensitive and attentive listener? I think you and Sarah, who is herself admirably forthright, will be grateful for being made aware of what people are really thinking and saying about you and your cabinet colleagues. It's true that every government in the world was dealt a difficult hand when COVID emerged late this last year. Following a precautionary principle, as many Asian countries did straight away when so much remained unknown, I always thought would have been wise. However, no such precautions, whether airport screening, test or trace, were deemed necessary. The government's policy could be summed up in 3 words: wash your hands. By mid-March, when Neil Ferguson's prophecy of doom prompted your government's overnight U-turn from herd immunity to local lockdown, the horse had already bolted. And the NHS had been culpably lax over this period, and the Public Health England in securing the necessary PPE and testing that would have protected medical staff, health and care workers. Since then, the best evidence is that the policies of lockdown, stay at home, save lives, protect the NHS and social distancing have cost at least as many lives as they've saved, and with very cruel consequences, callously so for the most vulnerable elderly, denying hospital treatment to the group you were meant to be protecting, and it transpires now to mothers-to-be. The number of stillbirths was reported in the Daily Mail, I think, yesterday. Despite the lack of evidence for it, and though there is now much greater understanding of who is most at risk from this disease, you have extended lockdown again and again. Can you deny the facts That for anyone under 50, the chances of dying from COVID are negligible? Or that the average age of death from COVID at 82.4 years is actually higher than the national average death rate of 81.16 years life expectancy for the UK as a whole? Or that the vast majority of the population is at little or no risk? On Sunday, Toby Young, a man whose advice you once followed, set out 10 reasons why a second lockdown is a truly terrible idea. Please read them on his website, Lockdown Skeptics, or on mine, and reconsider your ill-advised threat of Sunday that the new lockdown in England could be extended beyond 4 weeks if the number of infections does not fall far enough. How can you continue to treat every British citizen as though they face a high risk of being hospitalised or even dying as a result of exposure to COVID, when this patently is not true? And why pretend the NHS is overwhelmed when the Nightingale's hospitals lie empty with thousands of beds? And how, this weekend, could you have bought into and sold the public such a dodgy COVID death dossier, your realistic worst-case scenarios that lack any credibility as an excuse for this new lockdown? How can you justify failing to subject lockdown to a detailed cost-benefits exercise, and yet you're going down the same uncosted road again? And how can you justify outsourcing the entire educational, economic, mental and social well-being of the nation to ever more secretive and unaccountable NHS quangos with their own political and vested interests, all supposedly under the control of Matt Hancock at the Department of Health? Lastly, how can you, an economic liberal, be part of a government which has needlessly wrecked Britain's economy? You and your colleagues at SAGE may be shielded from the onslaught that the nation is about to experience, thanks to your publicly funded salaries and pensions. But most others, particularly the self-employed, the sole traders, and those who run small businesses, face a very different future, one that is genuinely frightening. Irresponsible doesn't begin to describe the national economic and political catastrophe your lockdown decisions are leading to. I hold no brief for Mr. Johnson, who I long suspected to be a man with little principle, now seemingly a man who is also easily spooked and dominated. You, I thought, were different, not one to fall for leftist authoritarianism or for NHS emoting claptrap. I thought you were honourable. That's why I'm so dismayed that you, of all people, have involved yourself in what amounts to deceit on an industrial scale and are party to such a deeply manipulative COVID fear propaganda, splurging taxpayer millions and accruing a vast debt on it along the way. It is my contention that many, perhaps most people in Britain, remain unaware of the level of figure fiddling and fanciful doomsday data presentation. This feeds into my own and colleagues' belief that you and your cabinet colleagues have participated in pumping out state propaganda that would not be out of place in China, Russia, or North Korea. As you have shown no moral courage by telling the truth about this in public, I can only conclude that you've been content to sit back and watch as liberties and livelihoods have been extinguished, and medical expertise has been denied to thousands who need it urgently, but whom the NHS refuses to treat. Either that, or you can no longer pretend to be a Democrat. I really wonder how you sleep at night. I suspect that, like your leader, you are so far into this mess that every decision is now about covering your back rather than confessing your mistakes and your advisor's utter incompetence. But you need to understand that it is a common view that you and your cabinet colleagues are not just crassly incompetent, but deliberately taking the country down a very bad route, and that you are doing so after every citizen has effectively been blindfolded, bound, and gagged by various arms of the state. Are you now so immersed in groupthink that you do not see the damage you have done and continue to do? You need to take a long, hard look at yourself and ask if you are happy to leave this appalling damage as your political legacy. You, of all people, should show the basic courtesy of honesty. Well, that's my letter to Mr. Gove. You can find it on our website, which is conservativewoman.co.uk, where you can find a whole tranche of critical articles and blogs and posts representing people's views who don't normally have a platform in the other media, and certainly not in the mainstream media, and their total dismay at what the government is doing. Thank you.